You're listening to the Manifestation Doll podcast, where we blend spell work with self concept, beauty with boldness, and manifestation with real life. I'm your host, Anastasia, aka the Manifestation Doll, content creator, manifestation mentor, and everyone's favorite spiritual doll. Whether you're brand new to your spiritual journey or deep in your evolution, I'm here to guide you, hype you, and remind you that you were never meant to live an average life. Welcome to the Manifestation Doll podcast. This is episode 1. I'm so happy that you are here. This is my background. What do you think? For my friends who are just listening, I'm just showing off where you guys normally see me if you catch me live streaming. We're sitting in the same spot. I just thought I would make a little cute background and actually include a video for if I put this on YouTube and or Spotify where people can watch me. Okay. So this is the Manifestation Doll podcast. In this episode 1, we're going to be talking about my spiritual journey and how I got into my spiritual journey now, where I am now, and where I started from. So if you were excited for that, just keep on listening. I am so grateful for you here. And yeah, so I would definitely say my true spirituality started when I was around the age of 9 years old. I was raised in Catholicism, so like the Catholic Church, when I was little. And I would say that we stopped going to church around the time of when I turned 9 years old. So when I became 9 is all of a sudden when I was exposed to the religion Santería. And Santería, I will just get that out of the way, is a closed practice, okay? It is Afro-Caribbean, West African traditions. It blends in that with Catholicism and that sort of thing. So I'm bringing this up because it is very important to who I am today and why getting into my spirituality now was, I don't want to say easy, but it just made sense because it's something that I've always known, right? So from age 9, I am the oldest out of 4 siblings. We would go to, I was basically just exposed and surrounded by rituals, offerings, altars, deep spiritual things. You know what I mean? So it's just something that I've always known. It was something that was always normal to me. So that is how now as an adult, certain things don't shock me, certain things don't spook me or nothing like that because as a kid, it's just something that I've always been taught. Okay. So from age 9, I want to say all the way up until age 16, it was definitely very much. I would do this. I would go along because obviously my parents are bringing us, and I would just do what I'm told. I would make sure I always get my cleanings, my spiritual cleanings. I would make sure like my parents had like this very, very strict um, routine that we had. So every morning, my parents left ritual oils. So kind of like you can see in the background for my friends who are viewing, I have my Art of the Root oils there. So very similar to Art of the Root oils, but they're just intention oils. They had different ones on the counter, and we could use them if we wanted. I'm gonna also put it out there. We were not forced to do anything that we didn't want to do. We kind of just did it naturally because our parents were like, "Hey, you should do this," and we're like, "Okay, cool." And as we got older, if it was something that we just didn't want to do anymore, my parents didn't push us. So before school, I would pick certain oils, I would put them on. And then also, they always made sure that we sprayed ourselves with holy water, or you can call it Florida water. I know the both of them are different, but as a kid, I can't remember if it was holy water or if it was Florida water, or if they called it holy water for us to be able to fully like grasp what that was easier. So my parents would always say, make sure you spray yourself before you leave, and then make sure you spray yourself when you got home. Because my mom used to tell us, like, when you're in school and you're around so many different energies all the time, like, you don't want to bring that in the house. So she was always like, spray yourself as soon as you enter the door. So it was just something that I was used to, and I did it literally for years and years and years. And it's got to the point where now I tell my kids, like, oh, let's clean ourselves real quick because it was just something that I've always been exposed to. So past age 16, I will say me out of all of my siblings, obviously I'm not them, but like if you had to rank us all in like who's most spiritual, I would obviously be number 1. And then my other siblings I wouldn't say aren't as spiritual as me. They're just, they follow the religion and they do what they're told, but they don't necessarily like practice. Like I said, I'm not fully for certain on that because now we're all adults. But at least growing up, I could tell like the more serious one was me. And it'll all make sense later as to why I'm saying that. Like why all of this stuff clicked easier for me than it did the others. But after age 16, I still followed what I was supposed to do. I kept up with my cleanings. I followed all of our spiritual things that we were supposed to do. And yeah, that was that. Now, 18 going into 19 is where all of a sudden everything really changed. So when I became an adult and I was pregnant with my first child and engaged to be married and then became married, right? So now everything started to change. So obviously my husband or fiance, boyfriend at the time was aware of like what I practiced spiritually. He was never the type to be like, "Oh, that's weird." He would just kind of like, be aware. And I will say for his own spiritual journey, I will touch on it in this episode. At the time, I wouldn't say he was atheist, but he was very much, he knew something was out there, but he didn't necessarily know what. And he was not the type to judge other people for what they believed in. So he has come a very long way since back then, I will say. But 18, 19 years old is when I really started to like, things started to shift with my spirituality. I would still be into doing what I need to do with my practices and stuff, but that's when I started to lose myself. And I genuinely believe postpartum depression had a really big part or a big role to play in why I felt so lost. But like, I had a lot of stuff going on at home. All of a sudden, me and my husband were starting to like not get, I don't want to say not get along, but our views weren't matching anymore for certain things because basically, with the way that I was raised, my husband obviously was not raised the same way. He's from Sweden, for those who don't know, and I met him online. So he lived in Sweden, I lived in North Carolina, and he ended up moving with me to live in North Carolina. Um, and he just didn't agree with the way that my parents would raise me and or talk to me, and he was the type of guy to be like, I want to defend you. And me growing up the way that I did, it was very much like you don't disrespect your parents whether they're right or wrong, and my husband didn't see it that way. So because like they were constantly butting heads, now tension started to rise, and I was very much asking like the sky, if you want to put it like that. Like, what the fuck is going on? Why is this happening to me? Like, what do I do? I'm feeling lost. So that is how I ended up moving to Sweden. I sold all of our shit in a month and we packed it up and we moved to Sweden. And I will say that was the darkest time of my life. That will be a separate episode because that was a very, very long story, a very intense, very emotional story, but it's very important. At least parts of it are very important for my spirituality sense. So, my mother-in-law was aware that I was very spiritual. She personally had her own psychic herself, which was very fascinating. Have I ever met her psychic? No. Do I ever want to meet her psychic? Absolutely not, considering what ends up happening in this story. But basically, I still was, worshiping the Orishas, which is through Santería, and, still practicing in my own way in Sweden. There wasn't much that I could do because, like, they did have spiritual shops, but they weren't as, like, equipped with a lot of stuff like you would find here in America, right? And then also, obviously, I'm in Scandinavia, different views, different all kinds of stuff. So I had access to like things like sage and like things like Palo Santo here and there, some crystals and some tarot cards. And I didn't get into tarot until still when I lived in Sweden, and that's later on in the story. So over time, me and my mother-in-law were continuing to butt heads. Just to fast forward, she hated me. I ended up finding out that she hated me. Did I know that she hated me before I moved there? Obviously not. I wouldn't have moved there, but it was too late. I lived with her and she despised me. And I would definitely ask someone out there being like, well, what did I do to deserve this? Why am I like literally suffering? But fast forward a year of me living in Sweden and living with my in-laws. And I told my husband, like, look, this is not working. I can't do this anymore. I couldn't work. I couldn't study. I couldn't do a lot of things because I didn't exist in a system due to going through immigration. Right. So it was just to like really sum that up, because that'll be another episode. It just wasn't a fun time. And to fast forward, literally, my mother in law ended up kicking me out and I became homeless. So I was literally in shambles. I'm crying, I'm screaming. I don't know what the fuck's going on. My kid was kidnapped by my in laws, and now I'm on the streets. And I went to my friend, and my friend very spiritual as well. I would definitely say at that time she was more spiritual than me, in a sense of like she practiced. I believe she was in the pagan faith, if I want to I don't fully remember, but she's the one who introduced me into tarot cards. And we would do random tarot pulls and tarot spreads and stuff like that. And it was very fascinating for me. I had no idea what was going on, but like I was like, hell yeah. You know what? Hell yeah. So she would pull tarot cards for me, and like we're just anything to get help me get my mind off of everything that was happening in my life. And that's when I really started to tap into my faith, because it felt like everything was crashing and burning on me. I was couch hopping. I was getting served papers from like all of a sudden a divorce, because my mother-in-law filed for divorce against me, even though, she filed the paperwork for my husband. She ended up submitting a child A word case against me, basically all kinds of defamation. Like in America, that shit wouldn't fly. In Sweden, apparently that shit had flown. And all I had left was my faith. I had no choice but to be like, it was either lay down and accept this, and my daughter needed me, or like start learning to trust and believe that everything's going to work out for me. I had one night where I was all the way in Nottingham, Sweden, which is about an hour train, maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes train ride from the city of Gothenburg, where my kid was with her dad and their family. And I would have to take the train all the time to get into the city. And I'll never forget, like, literally, I took a moment to myself and I was like, I can't keep doing this anymore. I cannot continue to allow everybody else to have power over me. And in that moment, I realized, like, I got to do something different. Like, sure, I am making an effort. I'm showing up to all of my appointments with my lawyer. I'm submitting all the paperwork and evidence that I can to the court to try to win something for my daughter. And even though shit was really hitting the fan, like you would call this a tower moment. Like this was 1000% for 6 months. I had a tower moment that lasted 6 months long. And sometimes to this day, I'm over here like, how the hell did I survive that? But by me constantly telling myself, like, I have no choice but to trust because I have nothing else. That is when things started to shift for me. People on the outside would be like, how the fuck did you end up winning this? Because everything was against you. I ended up losing in court, by the way, because I did not have a stable home for my daughter to live in. And which made sense. At the time, it didn't make sense. But now, fast forward, it made sense. Like, you ain't got no money, you ain't got nowhere to live. Why would they award you to live with her when your um, ex husband at the time, well, we weren't officially divorced, but we were split. If your ex husband has a stable job, has a stable home, and all kinds of stuff, like, duh. But at the time, I was like, why? Why? And I told myself, like, everything is going to work out the way that it needs to. I don't know how, and I don't know when, but I have no choice. And I'll never forget this one thing that my mom sent me a recording of, and this has to do with Santería. My mom sang me a song, and she sent it to me in Messenger. And I don't want to cry because it was very emotional, but she was like, basically the song about Jericho, which is a Santería, but Joshua, African spirit. Okay. Um, he technically isn't an African spirit, but I'm not even going to get into that. But she sent me a song that everyone knows about Joshua. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, and the world came tumbling down, or however that song goes. And I'll never forget that. And that also awakened something in me where I was like, I'm not alone. I just need to call on the spirits. I just need to call on the spirits. And I would call on them every day to keep giving me strength to keep going each and every day, because I didn't know what tomorrow was going to bring. I was literally homeless, couch hopping. I had $5 to $10 to my name to eat. And some days I was like, bro, I don't even know how am I going to eat today. I still have to pay for my phone because my ex-husband cut off my phone. So I had to then go and get my own phone plan. I had to argue with him about how I'm keeping my phone because he wanted to take my phone from me. It was really crazy. And basically his mom made him do that. So that way nobody starts a hate train against my husband. My husband was being A-worded by his mom, like verbally and mentally. Okay. That's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother episode. Okay. But by me tapping into my faith and trusting and believing that everything will work out is how everything ended up shifting in my favor. Literally, one day I'm in shambles. The next day, all of a sudden, I was able to rescue my husband from them, like their clutches, and rescue my daughter. And all of a sudden, we're, you know, trying our hardest to heal. And it was a lot. Somehow I was able to convince my husband to finally let me and my daughter go back to America. My mom and my grandma had to come up with some money to basically help me get back to the States. But before we get to that is when I casted my first spell. I don't remember what the spell was, but this is when I started practicing spell work. And I'll never forget, I was on my friend's porch because I finally found a place to live. It was only temporary, but I was on my friend's balcony and I had found a money spell online. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I found a candle. I sat on the balcony underneath the moon and I casted my first money spell because I was broke. Your girl was broke as hell. And what came out of that? I ended up manifesting. So, like, for those who don't know, I will be very brief on this. I was a financial dominatrix, for those who don't know. I've never talked about this on TikTok before. There were a lot of my followers who were from that back in the day who have commented and messaged me and been like, girl, you're doing so good now. Like, you look where you are. But, like, obviously, I was in a really dark place and I really needed something. So, by me doing financial domination, I was able to make up some money here and there to feed me and to get me some clothes and to get me whatever I needed, depending on the day. Some days, obviously, I was making nothing, but yeah, I ended up manifesting a guy who we would call it now a whale because it was very rare at the time. Findom was huge back then. Findom is getting bigger now because of TikTok and the trends. I really don't want to talk about it because it annoys me every time I see it on my For You page where people are like pay pigs, and it just drives me nuts because that chapter of my life is been closed. But I ended up attracting this guy who is a big spender. I'm just gonna put it like that, big spender. And for those who don't know what financial domination is, it's basically getting paid without anything in return, without any of these people who participate. So, like the sub, if you want to put it like that, expecting nothing in return. They just send you money just because you exist. And I manifested this guy like from my spell, and I kid you not, he would send me a lot of money. He loved to spoil me with shoes. He loved to spoil me with clothes, money, gift cards. It was insane. And literally, he appeared the next day after I casted that spell. And you would be like, well, how did you do it? I basically casted the spell and trusted and believed that it worked. Did I go looking for it? No, because I had no money. You know what I mean? I had no money. Okay. Me not having any money the next day was nothing new. So I didn't really have high expectations. And because I didn't have high expectations, boom, the the money worked. All of a sudden, this guy helped me. All of a sudden, he's sending me gifts to my mom's house. I had to come clean to my mom and tell her about it. My mom did know about it because when my mother-in-law tried to dox me at one point, and that wasn't fun. So when she tried to dox me, basically, uh, it was not good. I had basically had to tell my mom. So my mom knew where the gifts were coming from and where all this stuff was coming from. Did she agree with it? Absolutely fucking not. No, she did not. But what was she gonna do? She minded her own business at that point. So yeah, that's when my first spell ever worked. And then when I moved back to America, I was able to manifest or telling the spirits to help convince my husband to let me go because if he had not let me go, I wouldn't have been able to leave with my daughter. I could have left, but I wouldn't have been able to leave with my daughter. I had to get a letter for the airport that wrote from the other parent who's not there, basically saying that it is okay for me to take my daughter overseas. And like it took a lot of convincing and trusting the spirits that somehow it would work, and it did. It did work in my favor, and me and my daughter were able to escape. My husband wasn't able to come with us because of immigration in the U.S., and that's a whole nother story, like I said. So I was basically in America for about a year and a half by myself, raising Luna, my oldest. She was a nightmare. And obviously, because she had PTSD. She was a nightmare. It was horrible. I was going through a lot, and like I was at my lowest again, like again. And this is when I started turning into like manifestation. I started scripting. I kid you not, there was so many times where I would script like I make money easily and effortlessly, and then boom, I'm getting money from these random guys again. And like all of a sudden I'm like boom, cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. And I'm just like, bro, what the fuck? And again, it was from me detaching and me having no expectations, no high expectations, nothing. I'm like, okay, I did the work and now I move on. And then boom, it all worked out. So fast forward, my biggest manifestation around that time was trying to get my husband to move back to America. So for those who don't know, you need to have a sponsor to help you bring your partner to America or whatever, and you as a sponsor has to make a certain amount of money. And just to shorten that story, because that's also a really long story, I was able to manifest that I would be his sponsor. And a sponsor is something that you have for 10 years. So that means I would be sponsoring my husband for 10 years. Obviously, we're married, so it didn't really matter. But like, it was hard for me to try to get anybody else to sponsor my husband because they didn't want to have that 10-year commitment, right? So like at the very last minute, we were in a really bad time crunch because my husband had booked his medical appointment, which without realizing that he wasn't accepted yet. And basically it was about to expire. We had talked to immigration, USCIS, and we're like, please, it's about to expire. And they were literally like, well, we didn't tell you to go ahead and get your medical done, which was definitely our own problem. That was our own fault. But all of a sudden, last minute, they approved me as his sponsor. And it all just worked. It just all unfolded beautifully. And he flew out 2 days later back to America. And then he was with us. And that was the biggest miracle ever. He literally flew back to us, and I was able to land an apartment, my first ever solo apartment. Never lived alone until our apartment in here. And that is how I became super spiritual. Of course, from there, it like takes off like crazy. But that is part one to how I got into spirituality from the beginning. This is part two, which is the awakening and the breaking point of basically where everything changed for me. And I did touch up on it in part one. So basically, everything happening to me in Sweden is what cracked me open and what everything that shifted for me, because I feel like if I hadn't gone through what I went through in Sweden, I probably wouldn't be who I am today, and I wouldn't be where I am today, right? So, am I grateful that it happened? Yes. Does it suck that it happened? Also, yes. But I just feel like had not gone through those things, I would definitely not be where I am today. So, I'm just gonna put that out there. I will say during this time, I felt numb. I felt disconnected. I I felt abandoned. I was like, why is this happening to me? Like, why would anybody let this happen to me? You know what I mean? And I was very confused because I was like, what did I do to deserve what I am experiencing right now? And like, it just felt like everything was getting worse and worse and worse. At one point, there was another guy came into my life, pretty much at the beginning of when everything had happened. So like my husband, we obviously split. And then I met this guy, obviously, because I had nowhere to live. You know, your girl's got to eat. And he pretended to be like, I don't want to say pretended, it's possible that he genuinely did care for me at one point, but like he was like, oh, I understand, and like I want to help you. And he was a Libra. I'm gonna put that out there really quick. He was a Libra, and I'm a Taurus. And he listened to me and he took everything I've ever said and he kept that in his back pocket. So just keep that in mind, okay? And he would paint himself to be like, I can help you, and he would give me money for food every so often, and he drove around with me, and he really did keep my mind busy and away from all the bullshit. He did support me when I had visitation for my daughter at the like social services building, and he came with me, and he didn't go in, but like he stayed in the waiting room for me. And so I'm so grateful for those things because I didn't want to be alone for those parts. So I'm grateful that he was there for that. But he ended up doing some un not very good things to me and ended up giving me something that I could never get away from. And we're just gonna put it all out there in the open, HSV2. That way no one thinks anything even worse. You know what I mean? I mean, HSV2 is not fun, but he definitely gave me something. And I was like, it just felt like I was just wanting to be swallowed up by the earth. And I was like, what is happening? Why does this just keep getting worse and worse and worse? And this is definitely one of those moments where, have you ever heard the saying where they say God gives its toughest moments to its toughest warriors or something like that? Like, that's definitely what that felt like. Cause I was like, bro, I don't know how much more I can put up with, how much more I can take. And I just felt like I was just every day that went by, I was cracking more and more and more. And like I feel like you could see, like if you could take a moment to visualize like a statue, right? So I would be the statue. And as it's cracking, you can see light, like beams of light coming out of it. That's pretty much me. Like at that time, like I didn't realize I was cracking to become more and more into who I am today. But like that outer shell had to go, and I just never realized it. And at the end, when I made it back to America, and like even though I was still at my lowest because my husband wasn't with me and he was still suffering out there, and like, and then of course with all the bullshit I was going through at home here in America, like I knew that there was something bigger and something deeper, for me. Did I know what it was? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And by me and my husband getting to move together, of course, with our kid to our first apartment, I had the freedom. I had my first altar, which was cute. My first tiny little altar. I went to Goodwill and I bought a $2 really old nightstand is what it looked like. I actually still have it to this day. It's underneath my current, or now it's old now, but my old altar that I've had for a few years. It's literally underneath there. So I do still have it. And I'll never forget, I bought a little cloth to put on top of it and I put my candles. This is when I discovered Art of the Root, which was in 2020. When everything broke down, I had candles burning. I started my new career as a lash tech. I started my career as a lash tech in January of 2020. And that's when I started burning candles to manifest success, manifest more money, just manifest overall, financial success and happiness. And I will say my life did start to get better from there because my practice just started opening more and more. I had been doing tarot for a little while. So, like when I lived at home, I would do a tarot reading for my family. I would read my mom, I'd read my dad, I'd read my siblings and all kinds of stuff. I read my husband when we used to Skype, I read him through Skype. And it was just, that is really when everything started to change for me, and, like, I really stepped into my spiritual self, and I started to manifest, and I started to see things differently. I still have moments where I'd be like, "Well, bitch, why the fuck is this happening to me?" But, like, I had a less negative outlook on life because 'cause I'm like, "Okay, everything has a reason, everything has, like, a meaning." You know what I mean? I feel like when I started to see like synchronicities and like hearing from like guides and stuff didn't start until like 2022, like the end of 2022, going into 2023. So like that jump from 2020 to 2022, I was just kind of doing my own thing every single day, burning my candles. I burned a lot of candles, manifesting business success. I started mixing manifestation with my lash extension business and stuff like that. And I would just be like, manifesting an amazing year, and I was still actively practicing Santería. So, still attending what I need to attend, doing the things I was told to do, all that stuff. And I just feel like all of a sudden the really big shift happened for me in 2023 when all of a sudden my manifestation skills got even better. So like I was manifesting more business success. So I wanted to work for myself 100%. I had been doing lashes since 2020 in my apartment, and then I was able to manifest moving out of my apartment into a home. Like I still rent the home, and this is the home that I live in now, but it was a huge jump because we went from 895 rent for a 2 bed, 2 bath in 2020, which now I'm over here like, damn, I should have taken a little bit more seriousness that I had that and been a little bit more grateful that I had that. But then I jumped from that to 1675 a month. That was a huge leap of faith that I took where I was like, you know what, we're going to be able to pay this rent. And in theory, that was manifestation, the law of assumption, automatically assuming that everything will be cared for me and I will be fine, and because I had that kind of faith, everything was fine. I had nothing to worry about. And literally, I ended up having a situation with my apartment, trying to get out of my apartment. And I ended up doing a honey jar because that was what was advised of me from those in Santeria. So, also, it depends on who you ask. I was told that honey jars are a closed practice, but remember, I was taught or showed to do this in Santeria. So, I'm just laying that out there before anybody starts asking me about honey jars. But I was told to do the honey jar to kind of help me out of the apartment, and that worked. That worked really well. I was able to get a clean slate from my apartment. I was able to leave my apartment early. Like I basically broke my lease without having to pay a dime. I didn't have to pay a penny, and it was beautiful. It worked out amazing. So that was another cool part of my spiritual journey that I was able to get out of something like that so easily and effortlessly, just like I manifested it. And then I got into my house now, and I've been here ever since. I've been manifesting like I will never not have enough to pay rent. Rent will be paid every single month. Like intentions that I set with with me in my home. And because those are like intentions that I set, it became true. Basically, the law of assumption. I learned the law of assumption. Or came into the law of assumption. The law of attraction is what I got into first, I will say, but I prefer the law of assumption. I just feel like it's a lot easier to just assume what you assume to be true is true versus like attracts like, and like, the whole thing. That's a personal preference. I definitely like the law of assumption better. But I started to incorporate the law of assumption with my business practices with my salon. So then all of a sudden, it started to feel like everything was falling apart again because now I'm no longer keeping a job. I'm more overqualified for all the jobs that I wanted to have, and nothing was working. But the only thing that was working was my salon. I was manifesting more business success without even realizing it. And next thing you know, to fast forward a year and a half, basically, I got to a point where I no longer needed to work for the man, and I haven't worked for the man since. That was in 2023. The beginning of 2023 was my last job, and literally like job. And then, of course, I had the salon on the side and whatnot. I know that part two was really, really short, but part three has a bit more of a meaning because now we're transitioning into like, how did I really know, like, this is my awakening, this is it. And I feel like when I really tested my skills with my job, and specifically Doll Like Beauty, which was my beauty brand, is when I really started to see like things really changing for me. That's when I got into self concept. Self concept is basically the way that you see yourself. And when I started to change the way that I see myself and like seeing myself as a master manifester, that I always get what I want, people would see that I was posting manifestation quotes on my business pages and like in my real day to day life pages. And I talked about it on TikTok because I've been on TikTok since 2020. So a lot of you do know me from the 2020 days. But when I started to incorporate all of those things is when I realized that everything was changing because everything that I believed to be true about myself would start to play out in my life. I was able to do my lash extension business full time. I got to a point where I was able to charge top dollar. I opened a salon, and because of the way that I saw myself is how I was able to be able to do what I wanted. So like I saw myself as amazing in the game. I'm the best in the game. People love me. People were willing to pay the price that I charged because it's me. And when I started to see that that stuff was true is when all of a sudden everything started to click for me. I got excited. I was like, oh, what else can I manifest? Because all of this stuff is working out for me. Like, what else can I manifest? Like, I was super, super excited. I mean, who wouldn't be excited when you're seeing like shit play out for you? And I will never forget, like, all of a sudden, I just kept saying, I am booked and busy. I am booked and busy. I am booked and busy. And because I kept identifying with that, all of a sudden, I became booked and busy. I had client after client. I had a wait list. It was a really exciting time in my life. I was able to open my salon. I had a really big salon, by the way. I manifested I think it was how many square feet? I don't know. It was really big. It was a really big salon for one person. I had 3 rooms. I was able to have a waiting room, I was able to have my own work room, and I was able to have a little storage area, and then I was able to start teaching. So, when I started to teach, everything shifted even more because now I was changing money brackets because I started to change the way that I saw, how I make money. I started to tell myself, "I don't have to work hard to make a lot of money." That's when I started saying that affirmation. I don't have to work hard to make a lot of money. And because I believe that, it became true. So, like, that's when I got into teaching and like teaching classes. Like one of my classes, which was lash extensions, I actually did lip filler as well. I charged $1,500, and it was for one day for my lip filler class, which was my most popular. And then it was 2 days for my lash extension class. And then I had a combo class, which you could learn lash extensions and lip filler. It was 22,000, like $2,200. And a lot of people would be like, starting to get nervous about charging so much. Like basically when you start to get nervous about charging your worth is when you have a self-confidence issue to where you feel like people aren't going to see your worth. And when I started to change that about myself, which does go into spirituality, is when all of a sudden I felt like I could charge anything and make a lot of money. I could charge anything and people would pay it. And it became true because of the way that I saw myself. That's like the super key point is changing the way that you see yourself is how other people are going to reflect that back to you. And that is when I learned that while I was, in the lash extension beauty industry. And I told myself that I could have anything that I want. And by living that way is when I started to see all of that stuff coming out for me. working at the salon, all of a sudden, like, realistically, I didn't really need that many students to make sure I had my rent paid for the salon, my expenses at the salon, and then having rent paid at home, having my dual rent paid, and then my car. So, like, all of a sudden, I manifested my first luxury car, which was a BMW X5. That was a very exciting time of my life. Like, literally one day, I was like, "I wanna get a BMW," even though my dream car is a AMG G-Wagon G63 Mercedes, obviously, for those who don't know, and I was like, "Well, I need to have a step up from my CRV I was driving at the time." I'm like, "I'm not gonna just yeet from a CRV to a fucking G-Wagon. That would be like a culture shock for me." I'd be like, "Bitch, what the fuck is happening?" So, I was like, "Let me buy my first luxury car." I literally, I kid you not, on a Monday, I'm like, "I wanna go buy a BMW." Monday, I decided that. I drove to the dealership, and I walked out with it. Like, it was that set in stone. I told myself that I don't have to worry about the payments. It's not my problem. My job is to want the car, live the life of luxury, and the universe will provide. And the universe did. The universe for sure fucking did, because of the way that I believed what I believed to be true. Um, and my life just continued to go up and up from there. At one point, this is now I'm pregnant with my last baby. My career on TikTok is taking off, going crazy. All of a sudden, I decided I no longer want to do lash extensions anymore, and I want to pursue content full time, because for those who don't know, I didn't talk about that in the story at all. I have been doing content creation since 2010. I have been making YouTube videos at home in my mom's house. Every year I was making videos. Even when I moved to Sweden, my in-laws let me use their camera. I was making YouTube videos. When I came back to America, making YouTube videos in my tiny bedroom that me and my daughter shared. I was making YouTube videos when I moved to my apartment. I was making YouTube videos when I moved into this house. And yeah, I had never gave up with doing the content creation, right? And all of a sudden, everything started to take off with my content creation. I had been on TikTok for years. All of a sudden, it started to perform well. All of a sudden, TikTok Shop was really doing something for me, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore with the lash extensions. And I made a plan. I told myself I'm not doing this no more. And all of a sudden, because I manifested that shit, I was able to retire. I retired from the beauty industry. I retired. Huge. I bought my second luxury car, which is my Benz that I drive now. I am a baddie in a Benz. I am one step away from having my fucking G Wagon. And it's all about the way that I carry myself and the way that what I believe to be true about me. That is how I got to where I am today. My self-concept has been changing. Self-concept was the key to my manifestation, because what I believe to be true about me is how the world reflected that back onto me. And when you think about it, if you go all the way back to what happened to me in Sweden, I saw myself as unworthy. I saw myself as the problem. I saw myself as not worthy of being heard, or seen. I wanted to be swallowed up by the earth, and everybody reflected that back onto me. So that is how I have gotten to where I am today. Now I am a manifestation spirituality coach for thousands of you. I have grown from 100,000 followers to 181,000 followers on TikTok in a matter of 3 weeks by manifesting with water. I'm now way over 200,000, not way over, I'm over 200,000 followers now. And that all stemmed from what I believe to be true about me. I believe that everything that I do is successful. I believe that I am seen, I am heard, I am always chosen. Everything is always working out for me in the best possible way. And the universe is forced to show me why that is true, because I believe that to be true about me. So I want to thank you all for listening to this very long episode. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. This was a fun story to talk about. Definitely let me know what you want my next episode to be about. I enjoyed talking about and reminiscing on my path to spirituality. And I can't wait to see you all in the next one. With love and light, the Manifestation Doll.